Reality is not a straight line. Every passing moment is a chance for a new offshoot.
Hello, this is KMeisterG, bringing you a short video on Marvel's What If series. So this is going to be my review of the first 3 episodes that have just been released. So for those who don't know, this is an anthology series of animations. So Marvel have released 3 episodes so far, and I just wanted to give my thoughts on the 3 episodes. So the first episode asks the question, what if Peggy Carter became Captain America, or Captain Britain, or you know what I mean. It's really about what happens if Peggy Carter got the super soldier serum instead of Steve Rogers getting it. I think it's an interesting premise. The episode starts in almost exactly the same way as the first Captain America movie. So Steve Rogers gets into the machine that's going to inject him with the super soldier serum, but then something happens and Steve gets injured and Peggy Carter has to jump into the machine and she becomes the first super soldier. So that's an interesting difference from the actual movies, and there are some other differences as well. For example, she's actually able to save Bucky, whereas in the movies Bucky was injured, he went away, presumably everyone thought he died, but in the episode he gets saved by Peggy. There's also another difference where Steve Rogers actually gets an Iron Man style suit, which is interesting to see. There's also the same sort of romance subplot between Peggy and Steve, which is good. I'm glad they kept that. And then just like the Captain America movie, Peggy Carter also gets frozen until the present day, although it's not quite the same as in the movies. She's not frozen in ice. There's another way that they actually freeze her into the present day. So that's it, that's the essence of the story. So what did I think? I think the animation is great. I think the premise is interesting. I like the fact that many of the movie actors voice their characters in the animation. I'm a little bit disappointed that there's no real strong villain. This is really just a Peggy Carter show, and it's really focusing on her doing the same things that Captain America was doing in the actual movie. I was kind of hoping for a Red Skull versus Peggy Carter fight, but you don't get it at all. So the Red Skull is really relegated to a very minor role, and he's disposed of in the most flippant of ways, which I thought was a little bit disrespectful to the Red Skull. So the final villain is actually a kind of eldritch horror out of H.P. Lovecraft's novels, which is an interesting choice to make, I suppose. I would much have preferred Peggy going up against the Red Skull. Another problem I thought was that there was a real lack of general character building. So the episode is only about 35 minutes or so, so the story actually unfolds at a breathtaking pace. So there's no real time to get to know these characters, even though we sort of know them from the movies. These characters are really different in the sense they're in a different situation. It's not them reacting to what Steve Rogers is doing, it's them reacting to what Peggy is doing. So there's no real time to spend with those characters and really get to know them, because they are somewhat different from the actual movie itself. There's also a subplot about Peggy being discriminated against because she's a woman and she's living at a time when women didn't go into combat, so she's facing a lot of discrimination from her superior officers. So that's an interesting subplot, but it's really handled in a very ham-fisted manner. I wish they had spent some more time developing that angle of the actual story, but because the story is only 35 minutes long, there's just no time for it. So I guess the question is, would I like to see a sequel to this episode? I think the answer is yes. I'm intrigued. I'd like to see where they go next. I think it's an interesting premise, and I'd like to see how Peggy Carter is going to fit into the modern world. So I definitely want to see another episode, and I hope they do one. So my overall score would have to be 7 out of 10, which I think is a good score. So here's hoping for another episode featuring Peggy Carter again.
We have you outnumbered.
A Ravager never flies solo.
Now on to episode 2. So this episode asks the question, what if T'Challa was Star-Lord? So the story starts off in the same way as the start of the Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Then you have the reveal that it's actually T'Challa and not Peter Quill behind that helmet that Star-Lord wears. So how did T'Challa end up being Star-Lord? Well, in this alternate universe, Yondu's men go to pick up Peter Quill from Earth, but instead they pick up T'Challa. And the reason why they do that is because they're looking for something on Earth that's not from Earth. And of course, Wakanda is built on top of a giant vibranium meteorite. So they mistakenly go to Wakanda and they find T'Challa and they pick him up, thinking it's Peter Quill. Now the entire premise is completely ridiculous, but it's an interesting one. Then the rest of the story is about a heist. And then there's a double cross and a triple cross, and there are some great appearances by Thanos, who's actually now part of T'Challa's crew, so he's part of the Ravagers. And then you get to see the Collector and the Black Order again from Infinity War. So there's a lot going on in this episode. So what did I think of it? Well, I love to see T'Challa again. And of course, he is voiced by the late Chadwick Boseman. Sadly, he's no longer with us. So it was great to hear his voice again. Star-Lord is obviously not a king, but Chadwick Boseman's voice work I thought was great, and it still brings out T'Challa's regal nature. So I like that. The animation, again, is great. I really like the animation style. I like the heist story angle. It's nice to see Thanos and Nebula return, and same with the Collector. There's some nice cameos by Howard the Duck and also Ego, so that's very nice. And most of the characters are, of course, voiced by the actors who play them in the movies. So all of that was really nice. What I didn't like, I think that Star-Lord, or at least this version of T'Challa, he just seems too perfect. He's good at everything. So he managed to talk Thanos out of his plans. He made the Ravagers into super good guys instead of being the selfish pirates that they are in the movies. So everything just feels too perfect, and it really stretches the bounds of believability, even for an animation. And of course, Thanos is severely depowered. Like, he's taken out by Proxima Midnight, so that was kind of disappointing to see. And the entire story around the double cross and triple cross that inevitably happens, it's a little bit cliched, and you can really see it coming a mile away. So there wasn't anything new or different in the premise. Overall, it just felt like a Saturday morning cartoon. There were no real stakes. No one was in any real danger. I wish they had done something a little bit more dark and gritty, because it's an interesting premise. Maybe the heist could have been about the Infinity Gauntlet, and maybe they could have shown T'Challa actually trying to steal the gauntlet, and at the end maybe show how he managed to talk Thanos out of his plans. I think that would have been an interesting way to go, rather than just being told, oh, T'Challa did this, T'Challa did that, he prevented this, he prevented that, etc., etc. It would be nice to actually see Star-Lord do those things rather than just being told about it. So, would I like to see a sequel? Honestly, no, frankly. Especially with the passing of Chadwick Boseman. I think they should just retire the character, or, in the movies maybe they can recast him, but just avoid the entire premise of T'Challa being Star-Lord. I think it's an interesting idea, but the execution of it is, in my opinion, a little bit poor. So I would rate this episode probably 5 out of 10.
I never did get what he sees in her. Sure, she can land a punch, but only because people don't expect it.
Now, moving on to episode number 3. So this episode asks the question, what if all the Avengers died? So the episode starts off with a scene from Iron Man 2 with Tony Stark talking with Nick Fury and also Black Widow in the diner. And then Tony dies, and Black Widow is blamed for it, and she gets arrested. She eventually escapes custody thanks to Nick Fury, and she goes off to investigate what happened, how did Tony Stark actually die. And then you see a scene from the Thor movie where he is trying to recover his hammer. So in that scene where it's raining and he breaks into the S.H.I.E.L.D. compound, tries to retrieve the hammer. So you get to see the same scene. Then of course you've got Hawkeye. He has his arrow aimed at him, and then unlike in the movies, the arrow actually gets fired and it hits Thor and he dies. And of course Hawkeye is arrested, even though he is vehemently claiming that he didn't shoot. The arrow just fired by itself, apparently. And then Hawkeye himself dies in rather mysterious circumstances. And then of course Black Widow is off to find Bruce Banner. She finds him. Spoiler alert, he also dies mysteriously. And then Thor's death triggers an invasion by Loki and the Asgardians, who have come to Earth looking for revenge. And so Black Widow and Nick Fury, they have to find the real enemy who is killing all of these Avengers. So what did I think? I really liked this episode. There's a lot going on, but it's amazing that they managed to pack so much into an episode that's, I think, 35 minutes long. I really liked it. I think this is the strongest episode they have so far. It really had me engaged, because there's a fun little mystery going on. You really want to know who's killing all of these Avengers. I like the performances. I think the voice cast did a great job. Sam Jackson is always great in everything. So is Jeremy Renner. It's nice to see Frank Grillo return to voice Rumlow. And of course, Tom Hiddleston. He is great as Loki. I really liked him in this episode. In fact, the Loki in the What If series is a much better Loki than Loki is in the Loki series. He's actually menacing and also playful at the exact same time. So it was wonderful to see Tom Hiddleston's performance as Loki again. Scarlett Johansson unfortunately doesn't voice her character, which is a shame, although not unexpected given all the things that are going on between Scarlett Johansson and Disney at the moment. So there isn't anything that I didn't like. I would say this is a 10 out of 10 so far for me. Do I want to see a sequel? Absolutely. The episode ends suggesting there's going to be a follow-up, and an interesting follow-up. So I'd love to see a sequel to this. So that's it so far. Those are all the 3 episodes that have been released as of date. It's been a mixed bag, I think. There's a decent first episode, a not so great second episode, and I think a fantastic third episode. So I'm looking forward to the rest of the series. I'm hoping that the What If premise become even more strange and different to what we've seen so far. So yes, definitely love to see some more. So that's it from me. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time. Bye!